Nindalakani Sanye Cheta Soji Chona La Chanchuba Yasoje Dawi Cheye Yive Sananje Drola Benje Sanje Dro Shu Sanje Cheta Soji Chona La Chanchuba Do Tane Jasa Dawi Cheye Yive Sananje Drola Benje Yendruwa Shu Sanje Cheta Soji Chona La Chanchuba Do Dagi Chijin Jive Sana Drola Benji Sanje Dro Sho La Dana Midam Ji on board the Jajan of the Church of Chavana Sanje Sumbara to Shi Dividu Teta Shi the Bichin in Division 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 Yuvatini Chavada to the Yaku Dive Labe Naja Susan Midam Pitanilla Vatula to Vesuni Namo Lai Gadan on the Jagger Megan on talk with Tamjagado Dagi Chede or Kongo what you know, Mebani to so she me summit Beme de la Chaza Lo Ola Satani Kazore Sijawala Sonam Mimba Tamboto Pardo Dani Dobata Tamatashi Kudibe Doba Kangi Shede Pai Cheni Dasubana Cheni Sona member Tabo Do, say Gala, Takari Songre Sana, Yaki Usumji Lam Yirimbalaya, Lojangan de Jina. Ani you chung in Nega so, Ani Sona member Tabo Do, say Gala, Sona member de, and Miki Chibunk, Sudim, Sumala Dene. Ani looking at Jeki, and a castle do. Ani Sona member de Mikewa. Tambotone, many Mikachibun Sumba like Dane. Any she to be Dan Chabajan, Undo, Onika, Undi Dan to check two human with the essay. Sonami Batabatos. Padu Dan in Dobatan, say Gala, and a pardon down to Tene, and a Chimenasian Doseki, Lam Lavasum Lokbo in town. Any law similar lobby China any Tina Churungi Lawa Shiche, anything is Jilawa, Tene Shera Jilawa, Lagoa in the Shera Jilawa, Luzutela, and then Dame Raba, Dobi Shera Jilawata, Dame Dom Tamotobi Shera Gilawa Yudang, any Timba Shin Jogo in Zampa. Oh, any Sonami Batapatu Dani Dobatang, say Gala, any Raja to be Jay to Madruba Della Pane, any Raja to be Jay Tomo, any Castle de Della Raja to be Jay Fatu Dani Dobatangs. Tamatashi Queen to a bar, say Gala, any ta Castle Sanji you command Tobala. Hadu Church so de, and it didn't sing down, didn't see Shabaki, Pasha in Zatawa, or Tendery, and it or Tamotoman Jitawa Shevaki, Tamaka, or Tamatashi Kundoba, say Gala, and Dashi Kundoba, Sarah, and him didn't see Rajaji to it, Zimba. Danti Shabaki in a tree, and him Pasha Teta. Oh, can't get it. Oh, tender was it? Can't get it. Pioneer, that didn't sign, but do you say, oh.
So, as it says in Arya Deva's 400 verses, describing the sort of progression along the path, it says, first overcome what is non-virtuous, then overcome belief in a self, finally overcome all belief in entities, and wise is the person who understands this. So here in this verse, it's explaining the sort of progression that one takes. First, one trains in the sort of trainings for the being of small capacity or small scope, which is turning away from that which is non-virtuous, abandoning the 10 non-virtuous actions and guarding their ethics. So when a person is training in those trainings common to the person of small scope, they're focused on getting a higher rebirth, on being able to continue to practice the path by creating the causes to take rebirth as a human or a god and avoid falling into the lower realms. So for them, the primary training is turning away from non-virtuous actions and guarding their ethical conduct. And then one overcomes a belief in a self. So then this is talking about the trainings for the individual of middling capacity, where they begin looking at the three trainings of the trainings in ethical conduct, which is like the foundation, and then the trainings in meditative concentration and in wisdom. And so at this stage, one is determining the sort of coming to an understanding of selflessness. So coming to understand first the coarse selflessness of the person, realizing that they lack this kind of existence where they are a self-sufficient, substantial entity, and then coming to understand the more subtle selflessness of the person. And so at that stage, then one is coming to determine the sort of meanings of selflessness and train in that. And then it says, finally, overcome all belief in entities or things. So here, this is referring to then where one when one is trying to achieve Buddhahood, the main sort of hindrance, what is preventing us from becoming Buddhas, are the obscurations to omniscience, the sort of imprints of ignorance and the imprints of mistaken grasping at duality. And so slowly, by overcoming this subtle, the imprints of our ignorance which grasp at true existence, we're able to, as it says here, overcome all beliefs or all belief in entities, all views, until one finally is able to fully overcome those obscurations to omniscience, the imprints of our ignorance, and achieve full Buddhahood. So it ends saying, wise is the person who understands this. So wise is the person who understands the way that one progresses through the path as such.
Oh yeah, that do not kasore. Lawa chibe ka suwana se kene. Ani chiwa mita ba chambata. Ani kasore nganji dunga. Ani jamro ngason dunga ba ye mejene ine kunjo somla jaksoshi. Dibong gejo tada jubala. Anjobal hulen sheba chije lo se gala. Ani yo teki ju chunga ne so. Ani ngason ku dunga. Ani kastene. Odini ani ngason ku dunga. Chene ane tele jishin zhab jiu jizha tene tele juyu nipa nama guju sunla yeba yi chewa kita kanje jamzho tang ane nganju dunga samba tang shiba ane nganju dunga samba yinza nganju dunga samdi kala nganju ki dunga miyonga cheba la ane nganju jeji ki ju ane mige wa bongo wa yinza 아니 디바 뽕와지 디봉 그 디바 뽕와다 개와 주발라 전바 체체네 티기 아니 소나면 바 담보도 세게 주충을 길을 바데 데 아니 뒤에를 내다니 뭐 발론 둘도 동아숨지 취생만 보라 아니 참매지로 시조 첨보라 탄도 휴자체와 친지로 세당 오고 하마기 아니 서가 저런데 요코와는 가위 차다 통을 없음 파변여지 제손데 타별简单 전부 친지로 세대기 다다지 셔바나 신해체네 가서래 아니 거기 동아 삼네 고치 전에 안에 타버터니 그 로제네 아니 저와도지 동안 예월 시위 예월 시위 니시 타바 토바 쳬바라 아니 라와섬 제라라 거와 아니 라와섬 라와 쳬바라야 아니 셔럽지 라와라 라와 쳬가라 아니 또바인 차라는 바 시도 고모 거와 인장 다트니기 가서래 가서 마치도 로주데스테 디제라 아니 교친 등당 퇴모를 하면 로제나 아니 교친베 하면 로자네 교친베 하면 로자네 아니 디제서 나는 뭐야다 버서 산제 요코만 토발라 아니 토지기 아니 토바차와라 파도지기 니바 과타지 시와나 신체네 아니 라시디 주바제베 셈바사벤다 파자나 저와 방고와 인자 아니 셔르기 라와라 로조 오타도 스제임바레
So, as is described in the Lama Chöpa or the Guru Puja, here this presents again this Lam Rim, the path of the being of small scope, and then the path of the being of middling scope, and finally into the practitioner on the great scope. So here, first it goes through the difficulty of obtaining this precious human rebirth and so forth, and then turning to the idea of refuge. So the verse says, "Aghast at the searing blaze of suffering in the lower realms, we take heartfelt refuge in the three precious gems, and seek your blessings that we may eagerly endeavor to practice the various means for abandoning what is bound to misfortune and accumulating virtuous deeds." So as it says in the verse from 400 verses, first overcome what is non-virtuous. So here at the stage of the being of small scope, one has a fear, a suffering of, or a fear of the suffering of the lower realms. One is afraid of having to fall into those lower realms, and sees that only the triple jewel, the three jewels, have the ability to protect one from that kind of fate. So this combination of a fear of the suffering of the lower realms, along with a confident faith in the triple jewel, brings one to then recognize that in order to avoid falling into the lower realms, one needs to be cautious with respect to virtue and non-virtue. If you wish to not have to take rebirth in the lower realms, then one needs to create the causes for taking a good rebirth in the future. So one gains a sort of sense of refuge, as well as a sense of conscientiousness or cautiousness with respect to virtue and non-virtue. And then one turns to the trainings for the being of middling scope. And so here one comes to see that samsara is all in the nature of suffering. So the next verse in Lama Chöpa says, "Violently tossed amidst waves of delusions and karma, plagued by hordes of watery denizens, the three kinds of suffering, we seek your blessings to develop an intense longing to be free from this monstrous ocean of boundless and vicious existence." So at this point, one then recognizes that all of samsara is in the nature of suffering. It has not passed beyond this suffering, pervasive suffering of conditioned existence. And recognizing that, one wishes to be freed from samsara altogether. And so the only way one recognizes to be freed from samsara is to engage in the three trainings, to guard ethical conduct, to develop meditative concentration, as well as wisdom, in order to be able to free oneself from that situation. So here, as it says, we seek your blessings to develop an intense longing to be free. So one needs to develop this kind of renunciation, wishing to be free. And then turning to the trainings for the being of great capacity or great scope, they recognize that not only are they in this situation of suffering in samsara, but so too are all sentient beings. And there is a wish then to achieve the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete enlightenment in order to be able to benefit others. And then one recognizes that the obscurations, the obstacles to being able to achieve that state of enlightenment are the imprints, the seeds of ignorance. And so it is necessary to then reverse those, uproot those, in order to be able to achieve that state of perfect enlightenment.
Oh yeah. 다들이 타마다시 군도 봐서 타마다 아니 라신지 좋아 재미 따와기 아니 라신지 좋아 재미 따와 아니 나와 제발라 아니 라신지 좋아 재미 되게 재미기 현유 가바기 아니 사모 동반이 때라 배우고 我听着有什么当把你带了别把啦，咱别把切吧给带，带着对吧给你那去的嘛修啊切吧啦，你什么当把你带了别带把的了，他首先嘛不记有人呢，看上啊做的什么当把你当，你看说等中给听送把的啦，操通啊把的啦，当退休过嘛，你看说的现在嘛哇，下个给你说的把你一切。 他不听了呀，你当把电中国全都送把的，马瓦拉那么被军站的住吧，这除了出南我知吧，你听了电呢，对吧？这是送一边那呢，他对吧？我听不的， Toma denju gu tendu mawa lana mi bi junzen se ta kasan shi wa da tirwa o de kware sana rashin ga ya me ba da dila tene dijung ge na sha tamje teba ni mi gan do wa me shi ko se o de ani o kwande ji chenam rashin ji chuba chunsa za ya me ba da rashin ji chuba me na ya tene me ko ba 라신지 주바 매나면 아니 가서래 랑게 차셔야 되나 단단히 조단데라 규제나 되나 저와 당 차셔야 되나 저 완이 조저 요인다 주임 차셔 딜라 되네 아니 중화예장 아니 코대지 최단 디다라 denjung rashi mana denjung shotoba denjung shotoba maja denjung gi gunzengi ane rashi meba ba tutuba o tela shishigi tindu ane denjung shobada rashi meba soba den ga meba duatela o shishigi tindu menga duwa meshike o
no. So then, finally, as it says in 400 verses, one needs to overcome all views, or the views of entities. And here, this is referring to any sort of grasping, clinging to an object that is inherently, intrinsically existent. And so in order to overcome that kind of grasping at intrinsic existence, one needs to determine the meaning of emptiness, come to understand what the lack of intrinsic existence is, and in that way, then having determined the meaning of profound emptiness, this is what allows you to overcome all views, as it says here. So then, picking up where we had left off in the text, so we were at the point that was praising as supreme, teaching emptiness as meaning-dependent origination. And so this is divided into the actual meaning, as well as then showing that anyone who would say that the intention of the Buddha is something other than this, that's a laughable kind of position to take. And so among these topics, then going to the actual praising as supreme, teaching emptiness as dependent origination, here this is then divided into establishing that because the Buddha taught emptiness as dependent origination, this establishes that he is an unrivaled or a peerless speaker, and then the sort of wonderment of how this view, this essential point, was generated within J. Lama Tsongkhapa's own continuum, and then how one actually praises that. So here we had arrived at the 19th verse, which then says, "It is through the reason of dependent origination that one does not lean." Oh, sorry. I think we are actually on.
Oh yeah.
Sorry. So it's verse 20, which then says, "So it is through the reason of dependent origination that one does not lean towards an extreme. That you've declared this excellently is the reason, O Savior, of your being an unexcelled speaker." And then going into verse 20, "All this is devoid of essence, and from this arises that effect. These two certainties complement each other with no contradiction at all." So here, the fact that all phenomena within samsara and nirvana are not inherently existent does not mean that they are totally non-existent. One needs to understand that they are dependently originated. They are dependent upon causes and conditions, dependent upon their parts, and so forth. And so for one who understands the intention of the Buddha correctly, they are able to posit in relation to a single base the lack of intrinsic existence, as well as the validity of this cause gives rise to this effect.
Oh yeah, that Miga do a magic, and Miga Shichiki Tindu. Ani Tenjundang Rashi Tombanyo, the Shichi to Chiki Tundu, and short about the Miga Masam. Ani Tenjung Junzela Tenes, Tenechun Junzenji, Tadawala Menacing. Lesson 20 Gurjini, Mawalana maybe two, Segana, Tig, Carson Guardes, that Mingawa do a Massa. Tenechun, Teni Junzen to Chenem. And then Tenechun with Junzenji, Junzen to Chenem, Tenechun with Jesse, and it Tata, Rashi, Yabaki Tata Savata. 아니야 라시지 메바 로유즈 송와기 아니 쳇다세와 야나 땡리 중화데 땡리 참모 다수가 받지이나 아니 되게 다저게 타니가 세요데 다저게 타르 세데 아니 땅에 다와 땅에 가라야 미덴바데 아니 미네바르데 아니 어제 가서를 좀 내지 레버송바데 레버송바 세야데 샤주다.
No. So I apologize. I read the wrong verse. So this is actually beginning in 18, saying that there is no intrinsic existence at all, and that all functions as this arising independent on that. What need is there to say that these two converge without contradiction or without conflict? So not only is it the case that these two understandings, on the one hand, that all function, that there is no intrinsic existence whatsoever, and that there is causes arise from, or effects arise from causes. There's not any contradiction between those. So what need is there to say that they converge without conflict? They're mutually supportive kind of ideas. So here it says then, there's not any sort of, there's not even the slightest bit of inherent existence, because all phenomena within samsara and nirvana are dependent upon their causes and their parts and so forth. And so these two presentations are able to converge upon a single basis without any sort of contradiction between them. It is the lack of intrinsic existence of phenomena that eliminates the extreme of permanence of some sort of inherent or intrinsic existence that is eliminated by this extreme or by this supposition, and this actually allows for there to be functionality. There is no way that this is totally denying that phenomena exist, but rather their lack of intrinsic existence is what allows for them to have valid functioning.
Oh yeah, 미련 바디 미네가 송반 디니 레순 디니 세 레순 디니 그 괜히 마와라나 메비 추루 세가나 아니 담바냐메 샤자 생기 원보체 마와 아니 마와라나 메바오 마완다 메바 조비 마와 된다 메바 마와라나 메바야 멤버 마완다 메바 조비 아니 굉장하다래 굉장하다봐 임바들 가르래서나 텐드미 어디 가서를 대중 송바 대기 대추대 당바 대중 거처라 대중 동비텐도 송비 추티 아니 가수함 안 했는데 다 땡대티 아니 로유도 송와라 때네 아니 다저게 다 탐자라 좋아 인장 어때인자 아니다 리슨천이 그런지 마와라나 메바 땅바니 땅바 땡중 같은도 마와다 땡중 동비 텐도 마와나 마와라나 메바와 마완다 메바 세디 아테임바데.
So here then, for this very reason of dependent origination, then this is able to cut through any sort of, or remove any kind of wrong views, any extremist views. And so you explained this well. So this is then getting into verse 19. So it is through the reason of dependent origination that one does not lean towards an extreme. That you've declared this excellently is the reason, O Savior, of your being an unexcelled speaker. So it's for this very reason, this reason of dependent origination as being taught as emptiness, that is the sort of reason for asserting that the Buddha, this is an unexcelled, unrivaled speaker. And so here, this is a correct, a valid reason to praise the Buddha, and so it is by this way of teaching, by teaching emptiness as dependent origination and dependent origination as emptiness, that one is freed from all sort of extreme views. There's no way to hold to any kind of extreme if one properly understands emptiness as dependent origination, and this lack of intrinsic existence, emptiness, as dependent origination.
Oh yeah. 가서 탄일을 좋아 주시 좋아 주시래서 주디 타탐제라 다제가 타탐제라 좋아죠 야난 된다와디兄弟 안에 가서 안주와디 제발 좋아라 잖아 다위 제발 좋아라 잖아 그래是吧？那你把肯定的啥呢？咱这大天气，反正马西里面把准备大电子天气，到嘛电中个电子天气，电中个电子路有都上完，俺那有的塞哇，是吧？但那穷些哇呀，穷啊咱们去买，穷啊咱们去买，就把买人吧。俺那看是先看了样，俺那让买了把给。가서 라 말래 바데先了让来吧我先看了呀让把人家先了看了말래 바데 그게 요와 인장 나외 여다 써야 돼是吧나외 여다 써 랑신지 매제 와게 매바자 마여 봐 맞아 봐 아니 주제 나서 때와 고기 요와 인장 아니 채다 써 봐是吧我先那边有的当아니东边没得去说这样，他咱做给，现在那边有的是话，他东边没得去东，这些东边呢，对当这五千元出现了，他正在外加把没做老师搞，给他到外加把做这他年轻把的，将来才有啊，是不是
？So here it is by this method of teaching that one is freed from all kind of extreme views. And here, alternatively, one could apply this meaning of understanding in relation to a single basis without contradiction, these two, that everything lacks intrinsic existence and that there is functionality. One could apply this to the way of perfecting the analysis of the view by a particular yogi. So we see like in the three principal aspects of the path, this way of coming to the proper understanding of the view described. And so if we want to understand it in that way, as not just being the reason that that the Buddha is an unrivaled speaker, but also that this represents the sort of perfection of the analysis of the view by an individual yogi, that is also acceptable. And so here this goes with the verse from the three principal aspects of the path that we saw earlier, where it says that appearances dispel the extreme of existence and emptiness dispels the extreme of non-existence. So here again, coming to understand this logical proof that because things are dependently originated, they lack intrinsic existence, this dispels simultaneously both extremes. So when it says that because things arise, what it means is not just that they arise, but they arise in such a way that they necessarily depend upon others. So their arising is in no way inherent or intrinsic, but rather it is an arising that happens dependently. So that arising, those appearances, dispel the extreme of some kind of intrinsic existence, existence by means of its own characteristics. And then that things lack that kind of intrinsic existence, which allows for their functionality, which allows for that arising, that dispels the extreme of total non-existence. So it is in this way that one comes to perfect the view and eliminate both extremes simultaneously.
Oh yeah. Yeah, she was there. But then you would do that, Tadala Midaba Subitoni. Then you in between that, and Tadala Midamba. Tata Shavachidan and Koyamabu, Tata, and then these are she true at the Bitimba, Nasha, Chidan, and Kasa Tabatawata, Kasa Tena Mebatawalaya, and the Cheta, Kasa Tabatawala, and Tata Sene, and the Tamas, Koya, and then you would do that, Tata Sene, and the Rashi to a Timbala, Channel. Then you would do that, Tata, Midamba Sumbe, Dode, Docarere, Sana, and the Lambizaji Doye Gaso. 开外切呢，开外电中切呢多切切，是我开外给，俺那电机电话中给切呢嘛，俺那多把它提的，提军在了，俺那他到我来，我说带没些去，谁干了？俺那让星期出吧，准备打我带了，我说那把没些吧，提现有，俺那没把到啊，是吧？提现有没把到，他到我来，我说带没些，说上，
So then here it turns to then showing a source, a sutra, which teaches that for the reason of dependent origination, one does not rely upon extreme views. And so here again, where we talk about the extreme of permanence and the extreme of annihilation, Tak and Che in the Tibetan, here the extreme of permanence could refer to a lot of things potentially, like those individuals who hold a self to be permanent, the person as permanent or something like that. But here there is a specific connotation when we say the extreme of permanence. This is referring to grasping at intrinsic existence. Holding that kind of existence to be real is what is referred to as the extreme of permanence, or grasping at that kind of extreme. So it is for this reason of dependent origination, then that one doesn't rely upon any sort of extreme views. And the sutra quoted to demonstrate this is the Power of the Elephant Sutra. And here it says scholars, or those sort of experts, understand all phenomena are dependently originated, and therefore they don't rely whatsoever on extreme views. So it is for this reason of dependent origination that those who are wise don't rely upon this extreme of thinking that things have some sort of intrinsic existence.
Oh yeah, that is it. 多把大话咱们就顺便，我也是对的，咱们多一个多人说的，大把钱，多把大话咱们就顺便多年满足生的，多把大话咱们是顺便多年。我提给他，看着来啥呢？你我过去多一个数，你我去多一个数，俺那多把大就顺便吃的看着来啥呢？那做一个没多可切心。实际看着把我以往吧，谁干了？俺呢没到那做吧给，俺呢一个娃塞的，没到个名人吧，没到了的一个娃给，没到客气娃的。俺呢是我实际看着把我，实际看把一段娃的说吧，他那个，他也那个，俺呢那就给。你就在那个，你开把写个人吧的是吧？那就一个没到看见是自己看着把我用哇塞！我带他给他那个，你去评论说我带他，你带他了，你切把不先看呀有啊妈的，我带切把不先看呀有啊妈的，是带他看的人是呢，带他多别忘记。下把音，我带他，我自己，他那个，你就一段我带他们家，我七八包钱，挺先买吧。你带他多别忘个下把音，多别忘个下把顿军长干的是多别忘个几点那么大的，是他最起码的听着话的，是吧？几点那么的，这个我等一下，我听到的。多半大多数没是多的，考完的三年我可以提的多的，
너 얘기를
너
하고서.
있어 말해 또 있어 이렇게.
So here, then the next part, and in the Tibetan where it says ngun, it should be do for sutra. So as for a sutra which teaches that things are merely designated by mind, here from the question posed by Upali Sutra, it says then here even the various mind-pleasing blossoming flowers, and mind-pleasing actually might be just a name of a particular kind of flower. As well as these pleasant, radiant, like resplendent, supreme golden houses. And so this is referring to all of this sort of excellent environment of like a godly realm with all sorts of pleasing, beautiful things within it. All of the varieties of like beautiful, excellent things in this God realm. It continues then saying, have no maker at all. There is no creator for any of this. You can't point to some some being that created all of that, but rather they are posited through the power of conceptuality. So it is by being posited by mind that all of this appears, these varieties of flowers and these beautiful houses and so forth. And there's one more line usually quoted that says, through the power of conceptuality, the world is imputed. So all of the world, the environment as well as its inhabitants, are merely imputed through conceptuality. We can't point to some kind of maker or creator of all of that. So here, where it says that things are merely imputed by mind or merely nominally existent, mere name. So here, this word mere eliminates the possibility of some sort of autonomous, independent existence. So if one properly understands the way in which things are imputed by mind or designated by thought, then that cuts off the possibility of their existing the way that they are grasped by are grasping at true existence. So when we are properly able to understand that all is imputed by conceptuality, a proper understanding of this is then the method for recognizing the lack of true existence. So if you understand properly the way in which things are merely designated by mind, that they don't have any sort of autonomous or independent existence from their own side, then that becomes a method by which one can understand that they lack intrinsic existence, that they can't have this kind of true existence in the way that we normally grasp them or apprehend them to have. So it is by coming to properly recognize that things can't have sort of an autonomous or independent existence from their own side, recognizing that the way that they actually exist is as mere designations, as merely nominal, as posited by thought, then when you come to an understanding of that, that then becomes a method for overcoming the sort of clinging to true existence that we usually have have, because if things are merely designated or posited by thought, there's no way for them to have the kind of true existence that we normally superimpose upon them.
Oh yeah, that's it. 我们往给下巴引起，咱明怎么了？老板大把怎么怎么，明给下巴怎么了？俺那前期容往给多年，俺那也是教育告诉，这些创建。其他人就讲是哦，其实给创建其他人就讲，太大落期间落个大把怎么的，创建的呢，落个期间落个大把怎么的，就那有嘛的是，所以就归那没。现在创建太大，名怎么都是一个了，我创建太大落期间那个名怎么都大把怎么的是。每个大把怎么认识啊？我天哪些这些创建落亲戚落给每个大怎么在引亲戚落个大怎么甚至引把贴心都，哎，这些问题我都写把给做的些是的，其他那个我他们在电脑上按照，其他那个去他们在讲，俺那这些写法的我的写法给俺那每个瞎怎么的。下怎么引把这些创建单查吧？这些创建那样，这些创建没有哪些，哪些就出版那样，哪些就出版没吧？是吧？这些调的写吧，做的些是特别，俺的兄弟就主要把的呀。
So then that establishes that things are merely posited by thought, and then to present a sutra source for citing that for those things which are merely nominal or merely designated by thought, it is suitable to have action and agent. The sutra source for that is the Meeting of the Father and Son Sutra. And so here it uses the example of a city of scent eaters. So just in the way that this kind of city appears, but if you search for that city, this city of scent eaters in all of the 10 directions, you don't find an actual city. That is something which is merely a name given to this mistaken perception, because although it appears, it does not exist as it appears. And so those thus gone understand all beings like this, or see all beings like this. So this city of like scent eaters, we could think of them as like some kind of spirit that doesn't, although this city appears, if you try to search for that city, find it in all of the 10 directions, it's nowhere to be found. And so in the same way, all sentient beings, and those that are thus gone see this clearly, that all sentient beings of the 6 types, hell beings all the way to gods and so forth, appear as though they had some kind of true existence, but in reality they are merely nominally imputed, they are merely designated by thought. And so those who are thus gone understand all phenomena, inner and outer phenomena, the environment and its inhabitants, and all of the various types of inhabitants as being the same way, that they are merely nominally existent. They don't have some kind of intrinsic existence.
Oh yeah, that is nothing. As I said, all the super nothing. Get on by line, and get on by line. 这么点的康是，然后那个我是的，这么点的康大概是呢，这么点的康大概是，啊你我马上在那让我给我马上妈咪，让他把结束没到呢，是哦，然后我马上，啊你是妈咪让他把结束没到呢，啊你名字记得的是哦。 他说的，明咱们这俺那下巴印象，明咱们这地带的强求300些多瓦当，各把几万呢？强求300多瓦，各把当，俺呢，那可以呢，那个老万呢，居民别有关的住所，他开始的每天把所有人呐。 居民别有关的住吧，是吧？多瓦的各把这让些人买讲，俺那就嘛拿些钱呢。 俺这哪些去吃饭那哇？俺那居民别有关的住吧，
呀，打起楼啊呢？
啊，
打起楼啊？
打起是楼是的， the Kogomudu, Dagi Loas and that Dagi is Chidanagi, oh, Nam, give me Beshindos, they treat the teacher, you get the Karina Komati, Loa said, and a being dining by the China Karina, they are Komasa, Dagi, Gibani, Dagi is, give me Begonas. Ani Rashi true and Naya, Rashi true Matubadi, any give me Beogana.
So here then from the Perfection of Wisdom in 8,000 lines, there's a quotation from this sutra. So here it says then that the Buddha, the Bhagavan, whatever sort of being does not search for this thing which has some sort of autonomous existence. They don't observe that kind of existence as though it were able to set itself up and not dependent upon anything else. Who don't see them like that. They see that things are merely nominal, so they're not grasping at some sort of object which has autonomous or intrinsic existence, but rather they see that without seeing the sort of object as it's reified by our grasping at true existence, they see that all things are merely nominal, that are merely given and are merely posited by a name or by thought. And so here, then in the second part of this, where it says, so when I say bodhisattva and so forth, when you talk about bodhisattvas gathering together or being arranged in some way, and then here where it says, if people are reading the Tibetan, Daki Loa, I don't know what that has to do with lungs, and so it says that these are all established as being like illusions. So here, what is being said is that although all phenomena appear as though they had some kind of intrinsic existence from their own side, they don't have any of that existence, and so therefore they are like illusions. They appear in one way, although they exist in another. So that can be known from that example.
Yana Dagi Loa said, Matabache, Paladala to Loa. And then Dagi Le, Jimmy Beogana troop, Sena, and a quiet Dagi Le, and then Jimmy Beogana troops.
So maybe it's like the baladala narolo, like mind. So they're like posited by mind. So therefore they're established with the example of being illusion, like an illusion. But this spelling as though it were lungs is improper. Is a mistake.
Oh yeah, that is Daga Shabjin, Berlin Davaki Yang, and the Kasangama Lungtabana, Sita Yala, Tona, Tennessee, the Jabata. Kissing Pumbonam, then a good some Shedo, said Dotty in Gilida. Davi Shabji, Timani dollar, Tennessee, Cindy Bay, Juba Sode, and that.
So then this is also explained in other sources, as we saw before. Chandrakirti, he relies on Mahayana and Hinayana sutras using the example of the chariot as being designated on its parts and so forth. And so one can understand from these other sources the sort of method for determining the meaning of emptiness.
Oh, that didn't talk about Mingi Shabanya would turn to our chat. Talk about Tazam down, Mingi Shatamia turn Shabache. Oh, Shabas talk about Tawa. Taman Shabas said that there's a misery. Talk about Taman Shabas down, talk about Shabas Desaka in Jirava. Oh, Taman Jobade, Taman Yudi Shah said, and it's Taman Yudi. 下家的区别原因吧，是吧？下家区别，才买下巴塞的，好像下家你就对路才买区别原因呗，这点点民主塞讲啊，有时候就是吧，你等于说呀，多半大瓦当民给下巴团战了。 多半大战的民给下巴民给下山牛的天炸去但看上这个去的多半脚把拉是吧去的脚这多半才嘛的아니 가사티그 지라 요 말이是吧또 요거고 말이 가사티 최대 도반 줘봐라 최대 조제지 도바데 아니 가사티 기나 요 메거데 난 남겐당 아니 산제 그 주지 캠베 연대 저 강가 도반 샤점是吧是吧三件个机千百元的这民给下咱们要啊多半下咱们要啊的做这些多半的三件个机了要嘛的吧这是过的哦也没个的南京的民间电机是南京的民间电机什么要吧是南京做这个多半军电机哎什么越讲是南京做民给下巴咱的多半下巴现场做这个民当多半的啊你什么个举了越讲看下这个南京个啊你三这个缺的他啊你什么个没举了没把那些的是
이 남경이 민, 이 남경이 단예 람난디.
민 도바. 남진 조진대대서 도백 다와당 민의 견자라서 최대 도백 줘봐라 최대 조직 도백의 가사길에 요거고 말했어. 대명고와 그래서나 남진다 산제 그 세이나 아니 첨배의 연대라서 왔던 강가 아니 조직이 도바데 대다 좀 민기 샤바레 도배 샤바레 조직이 도바데 semjeng gile yawara ma to namjeng gile yawa mare sanje kasa namjeng gine ji kasa gile yawa mare
So here, then it continues saying that being designated by thought and being posited by name have a similar kind of meaning, but there are slight differences in some cases. So being posited by a valid cognition can have a difference from being merely posited by thought. But we don't need to get into all of that. So here, though, there is an important point that when a person posits a particular phenomena by the power of thought, it's not necessarily the case that the thought which is so positing that phenomena itself actually exists within the continuum of the person who has this thought which is so positing it. So to give an example then, although there are sentient beings who have the sort of word or the name omniscience in their continuum, so they have the ability to posit omniscience, they have the thought which posits the existence of omniscience, they don't have omniscience in their continuum. So although they have the thought which posits omniscience, they don't actually have omniscience or any of the qualities of the Buddha's knowledge and so forth. Although they have the sort of names, the words that are able to posit the existence of those qualities, they don't have those qualities within their own continuum. So here it says then, in the way that a sentient being could potentially have the term or the word omniscience within their continuum, there is no sentient being that has omniscience within their continuum.
Oh yeah. 做这个多把中间的一句了，每个话的三节句了，每个话的开始是呢，那可说嘞，多把了出现一般，瞧吧，俺那三节个出他们三把人当，俺那提个多把了出现一般，瞧吧了什么叫三节句了，没把出现吧是吧？但你话，这样跟俺那多把点军都是。 当把电球当兵那的，俺那出去了冲把给，冲两我这个军队的，我他考完的，在我开始送过来是呢，如果我要当把当，你来地带穷而已，另外人不判准的，开门把人出去吧，谁的他顶吧的。 如果我要当把当，是宽带个结果，更 디그암 치다나 거 오버 디그 가르쳐나 잡아마차 라 슈디그 셈 컨데지 디그암 치다나고 쉐그 아랑고 오버 추비 아니 동비 아 동바랑네 시tem바당 동방에 왜 디그 오버 동바당 오이네 시당 Good tenant, Dilla Dijun, Dilla Dija Chunga is one, you give a Shawala tenant, would Deva Chungata. You could you let tenant, Udunga Chungata. You lam them go back to Quatan Tobara. That Chacho watching you. Oh, you didn't would teach you in a sin you would taste. Oh, Sugar Domang living a shitang. You let the wood you in a shit and a June, then June, what Domang living a shitan, then June living a sin you would day. Penzing creep, Monsieur Butter. Penzing creep, Monsieur Bamasa, Childros to Chiltroa, Trocheba. What Domalo you to someone at then June know you to draw. Then you know you to someone yet, and Domalo you to someone at Trocheba. 이다 펜지 키체밤 키미셰밤 맞아 조수 디와 조 체반 딜라베 와자도 주와당 딜라베 마도 총와체 강시 예데세 딜라 와자 주와당 딜라 마도 총와강 세데 야 강시 예데 어 텐드라미 동바 덴중고 텐동의 신예와데 켜바시마도 동바 켜바시마도 무디체서 대단히 무디바 대단히 찾자면 어도 막 주비체 세된 바래 야
So then here, secondly, we have the sort of wonderment that comes from J. Rinpoche himself, having given rise to this essential point in his continuum. And so this comes in the next verse 20, where it says that all this is devoid of essence, and from this arises that effect. These two certainties complement each other with no contradiction at all. And it continues into the next verse. What is more amazing than this? What is more marvelous than this? So here, the meaning of this is that all phenomena within samsara and nirvana are empty of having some sort of self-essence or nature, intrinsic existence, but they're empty of an essence. And so that kind of certainty, when one has ascertained that, that ascertainment actually is not in contradiction in any way to the sort of ascertainment or certainty that this cause brings about this result. These two are mutually supportive. So not only do they not hinder or block each other at all, but actually they increase each other, they support each other. So here it says, what could be more marvelous than this, than that fact, that for one who has understood this correctly, when emptiness arises to their mind, then the understanding of dependent origination is strengthened. And when dependent origination arises in the mind, the understanding of emptiness is strengthened as well. So here, what he says, what could be more amazing than this, and what could be more marvelous than this? Other than only you, the Buddha, these Tirthikas or non-Buddhists don't know how to actualize even a portion of this, even a part of this.
Oh yeah, 만주 세회 당에 시치기 아니 라신지 동방에 왜 시치기 또지 아니 다 denjung yujana dena chom chashela dena chome denjung jishi shu la ga so shu xian du men zhuo wa ran xin yin yo dong bang ge zang ba an de dan de jiao men du ba de dan de jiao jiao luo de shu chung zhui o shu xian du men zhuo wa shu chung du men zhuo wa shu chung du men zhuo wa ma se ran xin yi dong bang ge wi duo ji但这代表了这边修气了，但这就但就因把的，俺那把看上落修气了主要个，就现在嘛，咱们这几周是几周为，俺那加班做完第一些，几周是几周哇，俺那交把的，俺那大家也干啥子的来送我的， 와 지소지 지소베 아니 따위 잡아 줘와 된다 아니 까위 굉장히 따와니 바꿔와 송아래 혼도 샤바 나시처럼
So, I apologize, in the last section, where it says that the certainty, the ascertainment that this cause leads to this result, this is with respect to all causes and results, but in particular, the Four Noble Truths, and understanding that the origin of suffering leads to suffering, and that the practice of the path leads to the truth of cessation. So here, where it's saying that this cause leads to this effect, we should understand it as such. And so here then, the force of the one ascertainment, so having ascertained, for example, dependent origination, and due to the force of that ascertainment, it's not the case that the other one, when that arises in the mind, is weakened or is lessened in any way, but rather by having given rise to an ascertainment of emptiness, then that would strengthen one's understanding of dependent origination and vice versa. There's no sort of way in which these are contradictory. And so, but although that is the case, it's very difficult to sort of perfect the analysis of this, wherein one supports the other, and they go in this way where they're mutually supportive. So for the reason that it is quite difficult to come to this point, it is said then that it is difficult to find the view.
Oh yeah, 다들 가서래 상동 친중 라른 첨보랑 라른 총아 상동 총아니 가서 다 된다 권두수만 나신 전에 아니 탄약이 나샤 아니 윤대진 남샤 조배 땡중 조바당 아니 라시지 동바 조준이고 지조조 직차와 마선 봐도 저 된다도 지조 저 상와대 다 가서대 체 대라만 대마인 봐 라시지 동바 좀 아니 조바라 다 가서래 동장 잠라 대점 메가고 와 동장 잠 조바라 대점 메가고서 동장 아니 윤대진 남샤 조바 어디 가서 들으세요. 동전 잠시에 대산 메가와 한동 최중당 아니 제배양이 아니 가서래 제가 자dom다 자와서写서
No. So here, then again, it's very difficult to be able to posit both of these correctly. So to be able to posit a presentation of the conventional of cause and effect while still retaining the proper understanding of emptiness, and also within positing emptiness or a lack of intrinsic existence, being able to properly posit conventional phenomena, this is quite difficult. So here it says then, just coming to an understanding which only includes emptiness, which is just merely emptiness, that isn't difficult. So this is why we see sort of varying levels of special insight, because as we can see in the various presentations of texts, there are lesser and greater degrees of special insight that one can come to. And so it is not difficult to just be able to posit emptiness, but to posit emptiness and dependent origination in this mutually supportive way is more difficult. And so we should know this from other sources, including the kind of advice that Manjushri gave to J. Rinpoche and so forth.
Oh yeah. 다 되네 다 된대랑 시점에 비견자도 도주 다 권도 샤바 나신 자체와당 자체라스 된대가 다지랑 시점에 봐대 아니 봐대 자체라스 다 라시점에 비견자지 된대 라시점에 봐 된대도 견자도 좋아니 나디 대세를 그다음에 개와 시간을 완전히 내지 송을 뒤 송을 요하지 좋아 네 가서래 카남보랑 컴퓨팅도 카이 난게 보랑 그 컴퓨팅도 카남보랑 컴퓨팅도 아니 보랑 그로 다다가 예배 따래 보랑 그로 다다가 예배 따라 부수 다다와 아니 다다와데 매투바테스 지난이가 또 그래서 치료와야 또 그래 아니 치료와게 아니 된다와데 치료에 부수 다다와 예비 루비 라시기 다양다 부르 다다와데 아니 부수 다다와 예와 주바 그 라시기 다양다 다시 오지바 그 라시기 다양다 라 마치지 잡아기 아니 규제 제수법이 장 규제 제수법이 자대다서 규제 제수법이 대다서 거를 너바단 다시 개와다게 송대 잡아 차오 사라 인자 다단다 되게 다들라 불어 닫아왜 땡디 아니 가난 불랑 콤비 땡도 아니 불어 닫아와 가서 부수 닫아와당 아니 부수 치마 제비 니와 여바니 못해 아니 따지기 제바지 균자질라 되나 지고 와래서 불어 닫아왜 달다나 제반이 오대. 라 제반이 오대 지고 와래서 대나신 제 라신 매비 땐데 라신 매바기 땐데 가서래 누수 송하여 가래다 땐데 라신 매비 땐데게 따래 땐데게 따람 라신 매바 땐데 이긴전 들어와니 세는 저저서 라신 땐데 라신 매비 긴전 들어주 자체라 라신 매바 땐데 준을 들어왔을 거나 다들 가르래서나 땐데게 따지 아니 라신 매바 주바나 라신 매바당 아니 땐데니오 니모데 가서래 라신 매비 균전을 때네 땐데 또바당 라신 매바 또바게 로니 전도 비천다레스 로니 전바 제수 전도 바게 어떤 순간에 와다 전도 받아 자고 그래서
로니 디 전도 그래
제수 제와 전바
Okay, so here this gets a little confusing for me, the translator. But here, so using the sign of the reasoning of dependent origination to sort of prove the lack of intrinsic existence, this sort of way is more renowned. But here, then, going to the meaning of dependent origination from this lack of intrinsic existence is a little bit different. So here it's giving this example of how if you have a lump of like sugar in your mouth, then on the basis of that, you are able to bring forth an ascertainment of both the flavor of that sugar as well as the form of it. And both Buddhists and non-Buddhists would posit that. But non-Buddhists say that this like the form of the sugar, like that is right now, is established by a sign of intrinsic existence. I really don't understand this. So here, but what this is getting at, and I am not explaining the example well, is whether there is a single mind which is able to bring out or bring forth two ascertainments simultaneously. So if there is some way to have a mind which would bring forth both the lack of intrinsic existence as well as some things being being dependently originated. And here, this gets into some of the sort of mind and awareness stuff, and whether it's, yeah.
这把你提起的，这把提醒度他等到普说当的话，俺那让些没把给俺那等着主把这些人呐，让些没把给打就不给，如果让些就没把当，如果等那你个等那情况，你个多把去是吧？哦，你个多把给俺那这把太太把你。And it teaches the Jambitari, Jabatabani teaches the Jambitari.
So here it's talking about whether you can have at a single time two valid inferences. So an inference that would say that, say, for example, for a sprout, an inference that it is not intrinsically existent and that it is dependently originated, whether you can have a sort of a sign or a reasoning that simultaneously brings forth both of those ascertainments as inferences.
我在听的开发他个送把的这把钱给那的是矿上送来传达的地嘞，他都喜欢那些是吧？我确实这把就是这把给这把单这些开发，我们都开发，我你得送把那些这把钱嘞是。
No, so this example of this like lump of sugar in your mouth and being able to ascertain simultaneously the flavor and the form of that is used as an example to apply to being able to simultaneously bring about two valid inferences. And so this is a point that is investigated by the scholarly.
Oh yeah, that你等把你判决记了记这是多少年是多少年是记了记这是多穷呐是那看是嘞，就说是记多穷呐，你把你我的判决踏中国做，踏中国出的多的是吧？
탑 중계.
탑스나 이렇게 탑을 총화스나 대우를 거라 탑 총으로 편지지라 지기 준전도 도주 시나 동바당 안에 가서를 군도 대바단 대바 니오디 군도 대바 쇼디 안에 전단 대바 좀도 방마인 봐 전단 대바 쇼디 工作电话也没找没到，看上去我也帮哎，是吧？天天电话没把小弟讲了，当然没把没工作电话叫我没对吧？当然没把没用吧。工作电话有的讲了，俺那天天电话也把小没对吧？没用吧。我的电话你我都，俺那这个小弟，这个做的这个做开始的，知道吧？的这个做吧的这个做不给军人都做闲呐是。工作电话叫吧的，天天电话叫吧了对吧？ 天天电话就把那工作电话叫把来对吧？人家盘起记了几个军人就做出闲了，就说是就着我穷了，我你我的盘子踏中国出的做的是吧？大课上学完吧，他那电话他是教我的，天天电话他就教我的是吧？我们去天天那看是，我们就别跟人家说，我。 전담 대바 줘봐 탑중세 가나 전담 대바 대라 밥사기 시 아니 시디 연아 아니 티딩도 전담 대바 대라 밥배나 치단 난그 전담 대바 대라 밥사기 치단 난그 오버디 연아 아니 티딩도 치나 전담 대바 대라 배야지 요아리 전담 대바 대라 밥사기 시 치단 난그 오면아 아니 전담 대바 매바입니다 现在东西工作扛单了，不是西工作我在塔钱，俺那团队把在塔太来穷啊。
So here then it says that these the two truths go in such a way that one sort of mutually supports the others. So if one understands that properly, how it is that the understandings of the two truths are mutually supportive, and one sort of reinforces the reasoning for the other, then one will actually be able to have this kind of situation where you see that these two certainties and ascertainments are like method and that arisen from method. They are mutually supportive. supportive. So, as we had talked about earlier, there is a case where someone is unable to simultaneously posit the two truths. They think that if they posit an ultimate truth, that sort of nullifies or negates conventional truth, and there are some that trying to posit conventional truth, they are then unable to posit a kind of ultimate truth. So one needs to come to a kind of understanding where you see that these are mutually beneficial, that when you posit ultimate truth, that allows for positing conventional truth and vice versa. Conventional truth is supportive of then being able to posit ultimate truth. So here one should understand that these two are mutually supportive, mutually beneficial, like method and that which is arisen from method. So I had quoted earlier from the Entry to the Middle Way by Chandrakirti, where he refers to phenomenal or conventional truth as being the method, and then ultimate truth is that arisen from method. So here, the meaning of that is that in order to determine the meaning of emptiness, or in order to establish ultimate truth, one has to have a basis on which to do that. So one needs to ascertain a conventional object in order to then be able to determine its final nature, determine its ultimate truth. So if you don't have some basis, some object, you can't then do this kind of investigation. If you don't have a conventional truth upon which to then investigate and posit its ultimate truth, you can't posit either truth. So the conventional is then the method, in that you need to properly identify a basis to then investigate its ultimate nature, and the ultimate truth is then that which is arisen from method. So one should understand the way in which these are mutually supportive.
Oh yeah. Tanya demba tapsu juwa, tandan demba tapchung juwa de sedan jibashe jachogo jiri. Tanya demba kunzo demba tapsu juwa, tandan demba tala juwa. Zawa shere kasu tanya lani ma demba tambi tuni to munju se de jibashe che. Ra de tende che tanya se de kunzo demba che. Tanya lani ma demba tambi tuni to munju se tandan demba o de che. Deni tapchung ju drodi. Tombe 나와랑에 와참바 랑시지 동바 인장 아니 라운도 마주바 인장 아니 덴디라를 와참베 덴지셔 대와 좋아랑 와참베 랑시지 마주 동바랑 와참베 람라 림지 라베스 다 람라 림지 라베 와참베 람라 림지 라베 다다시 시와나시 전에 아니 교충우당 투몽고 말라 남질이 말라 때네 토마 난로 미동신 시달라 미네와 드니야 랑디가라 아니 교딩기 남라가라 아니 시위타라 모종 시위타 체배냐데라 모종 그와 체배 얘기 개와 체체 점진냐데를 듣는 게 봐마인 봐 체달라 미네봐 아니 수군이 람탑신이 공발라 때네 아니 수군이 좀 수군이 줘봐 요 동방기 요 참배 나와 동방랑 요 참배 땡중 로유도 소외 아니 라시지 동방랑 요 참배 아니 스바 코알라 미냐바 시바 코알라 미네바 라시지 동바 되게 시바 코알라 미네인자 라시지 동바 아니 또 별로 아니 과연에 야도 콤디 아니 코외주 저와 시바 코외주 아니 덴진라 바 체베 덴진 밤베 아니 시달라 미네바 기다려 미네베 드니다 추구 주바탕 데르베 야 안테바다
So here then it says one should understand the way in which these work as being method, and that arisen from method. As it says in the root verses on wisdom by Nagarjuna, if you don't understand conventional truth or phenomenal truth, then you can't understand ultimate truth. So you have to have you have to have a conventionality on the basis of which you then determine ultimate truth. Without that, there's no way to understand conventional or ultimate truth. So here, then it continues back to the idea that this certainty of emptiness, by emptiness, one brings forth certainty in appearances. So here, one again, by recognizing that all phenomena lack intrinsic existence, this brings forth certainty in their appearances. They appear as though they had some kind of intrinsic existence, but they don't. And so here, as one trains along the path by training sequentially in stages along the path, first one avoids falling into the lower realms. So again, this is the training for the being of small capacity or small scope. Well, where one is trying to avoid falling into a lower rebirth, and one also does not go to the extreme of peace. One does not abide in the extreme of peace, but rather accomplishes the two Buddha bodies. So here, one doesn't remain either within samsara or falling into the lower realms, but also doesn't abide in the sphere of peace, recognizes that other sentient beings need one's help, and attains the two form bodies there. So here, this is referring to the bodies that then help other sentient beings. So one doesn't abide in the sphere of peace. And then by appearances, this brings forth certainty in emptiness. So the recognition of things as being dependently originated and appearing as dependent originations, it actually strengthens this mind, realizing the lack of intrinsic existence, brings forth certainty in that, such that one doesn't remain within the extreme of samsara and accomplishes the Dharmakaya, the truth body, the wisdom, the truth body of the Buddha. So here, one recognizes that it is the grasping at true existence that keeps one within samsara, and so by abandoning all grasping at true existence, by abandoning its imprints and its seeds as well as a manifest grasping, one is able to actualize the truth body of a Buddha.
Oh yeah, that didn't cause a sugar to batang. That didn't then you rang never lit, then you never some Tobatasm, then you never, and the shasam down. Le shasam, and make it about and be then you take it down, and the castle, Dale. Ane Rashiji Mebang never and Taving never tell us. Taving never tell us. Or Taving never temper in the Ane Rashiji Tombaki, Taving never Tene, Ane Casore, Tawati Tembi, Ane Cas Rashiji Tomba Meba, Tella Papa Tella, Jesus to be and then carry on good ace, Rashim, but then la Papa Tella, Jesus to be and then carry on good ace, and Anita Castle till a time between Tembacha. Rashim Batana Pop. Tell a time between Tembacha. And then Rashiji meant Tene Rashim may be Jesus to be and Kayan Warriors and Annie Umachubala saw Jimba don't want you see Tembache. Jimba. Oh, Annie Jiso, Jassaji Jabba, Sanja, you come back, Tobaji, Jassaji Jabba, Chidu, Love Goa in Zang, Jabba Chilla Love Goa in Zang, Jimba don't want you see. Annie Samja do what you know, I'm Mississippi, Ninja Tampa Chabata. Annie tell Jimba don't want you, Ninja Tampa. Annie do, or Shanji do want Mississippi Sabba Pavata. I do so. Jimba don't want you, Ninja Tampa, Sabba Comjeti, go on, Chanchu to Suana Centa, or Taji Chaki, and then to do Danada, and a pair like you are. She saw you and then I'm Jambatang. Oh, then you 가서는 때라 탐나 안에 공도 쉐비에 된다 용하체 나 되니라 냠나 안에 된다 잡아 토가봐 야
So here it says then that when by the certainty in dependent origination, one comes to recognize that all phenomena are merely posited by mind, and so that understanding that things are, and here where it says dependently originated, this is referring again to the understanding that things are merely designated by mind. So that certainty that all phenomena are merely designated by mind, the understanding that they are merely posited by mind, that from that that brings forth certainty in the view. The view here again referring to a lack of intrinsic existence. One determines then the meaning of emptiness. So here the understanding of things being dependently designated actually reinforces, helps, aids one in coming to the proper understanding of emptiness, and it is then that one, having come to that proper understanding of emptiness, that from that one then engages in the various trainings. And so here again, these two are the sort of side of the view and the side of conduct are not in opposition, but rather are mutually supportive. So here it doesn't say that it's quoted from Chandrakirti, but this is also in Chandrakirti's Entry to the Middle Way, that says that then once one has determined the view or brought forth this kind of certainty of the view, then one engages in the practice of the perfections, such as being generous, giving away, and being generous and so forth, and also relying upon compassion, training in this attitude which sees it as unbearable to watch other sentient beings have to suffer in samsara and so forth. One increases one's patience, and all of the various sides of the conduct side of the path are actually strengthened. It brings forth the qualities such as compassion and generosity and so forth. But if one degenerates from this understanding of the two truths, if one doesn't have a proper sort of understanding, then it's difficult to even obtain a good rebirth in the future. If one falls away from the proper kind of understanding of the two truths and how they are mutually supportive, then it's difficult to even be able to gain a good rebirth in a happy migration in the future. So it's saying that if you refute intrinsic existence, if one eliminates the possibility that things are intrinsically existent, this does not mean that you refute all objects whatsoever, but rather you would recognize that all internal and external phenomena are merely nominal, are merely posited by the force of name and so forth. And this allows you to then bring forth a kind of understanding whereby the recognition of this lack of intrinsic existence brings forth the kind of practice of the conduct side, so the trainings in compassion and so forth, as well as one, by recognizing that things are merely nominally existent, that keeps one from going into an extreme of there having some kind of intrinsic existence. And so one's view and conduct are mutually strengthened here.
Oh yeah, that the new sunju yi chane, the new sunju ki yi chane, lot, Kawana Jong, what are you about Jesus or Joker down, that mama china madras, that's somebody tell it then, such as somebody tell it then, and it about Jesuni, and it jumped them then, and Jangola Matongo, Jesuiti. 수지철라 떠나니 떠봐 규치 현도미 떠봐 규치 현도미 세대 임바자 수지철라 떠나니 떠봐 규치 현도미 세대 나디 가르송을 해서나 동바 땡중 그 텐도 송비 아니 송비 춘디 관에 아니 좀 되냐면 생기 야자 생길라 아니 또바 자기 나 켜라 떠나 또바 테니 아니 또바 라나메 바 주그레 또바 라나 바 주치 신 또바 투모마인 바 민주 아니 신도 또바 세다 가서래 또바 만보 요와 인상 로 좀 된들 또바 만보 요와 인상 또바 현지관에 또바데 아니 신도 또바데 투모마인 바 민주 시와原来先了对白，他明写吧我现在先有关的对吧的，俺对吧，他明对吧马来送完白的他，那中国对吧那些个对吧马来是，错的对吧，对吧马湾大米的小吧个对吧的马来是。
So then, for those scholars who bring about in their mind this connection, this union of the two truths, there are ways that they're praised as being excellent and so forth, and one really should expand upon this, but fearing that it'll be too long, he doesn't. So then the next point is how, in dependence on that, J. Lama Tsongkhapa actually goes about praising the Buddha. So here, this is the second half of verse 21, where it is saying, if one praises you in this manner, this is real praise, otherwise not. So here, these two lines say, therefore, so for all of these reasonings that have been listed above, then if one praises you for this way of having taught emptiness as dependent origination, then that praise is the sort of best, the highest, most unexcelled praise one could give to the teacher, the Buddha. And any other sort of praise is just sort of common. It's not this uncommon, special kind of praise. And so there are many different ways that one could go about praising the Buddha for all sorts of various qualities, but praising the Buddha for any other sort of quality is not like this, is not this type of praise, as in is not as supreme, or sort of is not the most unexcelled kind of way that one could praise the Buddha for any other qualities, but by praising for this, for teaching emptiness as dependent origination, that is the unexcelled kind of praise.
Oh yeah, 좀 된데라 땡중 숨불권에 떠봐대 아니 떠봐 셴래 개봐도 파베 파절라면 봐 인별권에 떠봐래 레생님 보라 어떤 봐 셴래 이제 개봐도 파베 파절라면 봐 인바 숨불권에 떠봐대 아니 다 된다지 가서래 잡아셔라 그땐 실실 가서 관계 땡지 들어와서 가봐면 봐 개만 봤어야 다 아니 관계 돈다 땡주다 음비년도 순조 충분해 봤어요. 저 강가 다 마원 담에 세야지. 마원 담에 봐줘야 굉장히 대인 말이 사무다 주고 거기라 점된데 천조되라 마원 담에 봤어. 자신 제지고 아니 천조게라 담바님에 담바 점된데스. 담바님에서라 아 누자남 가서라 동아와 뉴모보다 안에 시지 뒤바다 담바 쳐밤 안에 동아라 담바 쳐비 안에 좀 된데스 저도하체 자식을 남기는 부분인데 다 사무랍다지 과에는 안에 마와 담에 대서 샤지도 새로다 담바 땡중 것도 마와라 간다매봐 담바 현来이제 쳐봐도 봐요 파절라나 매봐 담바 땡중 된데 송바디 인장 뒤송과다
So here, then, it says sort of that any other way of praising the Buddha other than this is not real praise. So there are other examples of praising the Buddha in this way, as in from the text by J. Lama Tsongkhapa, The Essence of Good Explanations, and so forth. And so in terms of, and as well as the homage and praise that begins Nagarjuna's root verses on wisdom. Again, this is, I prostrate to those holy utterances of the perfect Buddha who taught dependent arising, neither cessation nor production, neither annihilation nor permanence, neither coming nor going, neither difference nor sameness, and that peace is the total pacification of all elaborations. And there are many different textual sources where they praise the Buddha, praising the Buddha for his teaching on the path of the vast activities, as well as in terms of this profound view. And it is when one praises because of the profound view that it is said to be sort of unrivaled, supreme kind of praise for the Buddha, but that other praise does not like live up to that.
Oh yeah, that is that's somebody to combat Shandu Mavanam, Satanju Tomba Tenjungu tend to Sumbam, Tenju Tombi tend to Sumba Tele Shandu Mawa. Nam Anishaka Ginesu Tambala. Ane Tenjung Kerlana, Donina Miseba Watsawa Nesu Tambatang. Tanju Kerlana, Donina Miseba Watsawa Nesu Tambatam. Tigi Taban Jabala. Ane tendewe o Watsawa Nesu Tambat, Kalanka Teni Taban Jokawa Tamba. Ane Kerlana Gantu Tambata, Tasum de toi. That didn't Tambode. Oh, Casare. Then you care on not only the miserable water in a Tambatella. And oh, that Javala, more better to Sumai. Kashi Chetan Shetraba says that in Bada. Kashi Chetan Shetraba. You know. 看去现在写着吧，谢谢。天你这段节目音标，节目音标开，这段节目音标开不的时候，朗读他的那么不是，但他说的这段节目音标，你夸张的送给东阿了，叫他切吧给，叫他节目音标给，你切不没写吧？切吧说，你郎家。 当俺的团在了，朗读今年了，蒙北，俺的马里被写完就上完，马里被写完就上完，马里被全都上完，但是提完就上完一就感谢，给俺的等把了，等把菜嘛全当写这话的是，等把菜嘛，俺的全当写这话的，找点准备是，那边呢常见的。 常见吧，七路为常见吧的，那七路七十八的，目的间太大给，那全那让些买把电被咱没事把的，那没事把，咱没事把电把得了他，今天的让个电把开买两把烟张，太大给咱没事把的，我才去继续也得往买的，呀。
So then moving to the next set of points, the first of these is that those who would say that the intention of the Buddha is something other than this, that's a laughable kind of position. And so here, this is saying that those who would assert that the sage, the Buddha's intention is something other than teaching dependent arising as the meaning of emptiness and emptiness as the meaning of dependent arising. If you were to assert that the Buddha's intention were other than that, that is something that is laughable. And then having accepted dependent origination, not being able to bear emptiness is sort of amazing, or in a strange, not like good amazing way, but a strange thing. And then showing that for those, it's very difficult to proceed to liberation. And then showing this sort of contradiction in taking up only dependent origination but not accepting emptiness. So the first of these begins with verse 22, where it says that being enslaved by ignorance, those who fiercely oppose you, what is so astonishing about their being unable to bear the sound of no intrinsic existence? So here, the explanation in the commentary says then, those individuals who are sort of deluded or enslaved by ignorance, they have this ignorance by which they don't know the points of what is to be adopted and what is to be abandoned, and they don't know the particularities of what makes something a source of refuge and what makes something not worthy of refuge. So they are totally confused about what they should practice, what they should abandon, and what is a source of refuge and what is not. And so those who are like enslaved by that ignorance, when they have come under the control of that, they act, these beings towards you, the teacher, who is a valid being, they have like anger or animosity towards the Buddha as a teacher. So this is, for example, those non-Buddhist schools like the Samkhyas, who take the Buddha as their enemy or hold the Buddha as their enemy, as well as the Vaisheshikas, not to be confused with the Vaibhashikas, but the Vaisheshikas, as well as other types of non-Buddhist schools, all of them are unable to bear this lion's roar of emptiness. But what is so wondrous about that, or what's so amazing about that? It's not amazing. They find they are in opposition to the Buddha already. So why is it that we would be amazed that they aren't able to bear the sound of emptiness?
Oh yeah, that thing what charge maybe any cause 가르에서나 공도 매와 대다 장전바당 지랑 많아서 와 대다기 아니 매와 대다라 라랑 그 주다당 가와기 코란지 아니 주위 남바 샤바기 아니 주다 주위 수당 아니 코란지 그 대다 땜바게 트당 가 라승가시 가와기 가와요 말이
So here, these other kind of non-Buddhist tenet holders who would say, individuals like the Samkhyas and the Vaisheshikas and so forth, their way of positing things and these words, there's no sort of contradiction. They wouldn't accept a lack of intrinsic existence. So why would there be sort of why would it be amazing that they're not able to accept that? They themselves say that they don't accept that. So what's going to be so sort of amazing about that?